Several months later, he summoned me into the inner sanctum of the Imam Bara Mosque in Skardu. It was quite imposing, all these men in black turbans, and I thought I was going to get booted out of the country, but instead he brought me a red velvet box, and inside was a letter written in the ornate Farsi or Persian script. And it read, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We reviewed your case. In our Holy Quran, education is encouraged for all children. And furthermore, what this man is doing is in the highest principles of Islam. We give our blessings and our support. And that was really the way I was able to get really started with girls' education, thanks to Saeed Abbas. So, why is educating girls so important? You know, we can drop bombs, we can surge troops, we can build roads, we can put in electricity, we can put in computers, we can do many other things. But unless girls are educated, a society will never, never change. Several global studies show educating girls to at least a 5th grade level, it does 3 important things. Number 1, reduce infant mortality. Number 2, reduce the population explosion. And number 3, improve the quality of health and life itself. And I think number 2 is especially important. You know, we have a lot of problems in the world today. Don't you think so? We have global warming, we have environmental problems, we have wars over oil, land, and energy. But I think one of the main problems on the planet today is there's simply too many people on the planet, especially if you look in 3 to 5 generations. Besides asking them to come to Canada to help your population here, the #1 way to reduce population is simply female literacy. And the best example is the country of Bangladesh. In 1970, the female literacy rate was less than 20%. And today, it's tripled, more than 60%. And if you look at a population graph, you can see in Bangladesh, it's just reaching an apex, 2.8 live births for a female. 40 years ago, it was 8 births for a female. And the main reason, again, is simply female literacy. Now, unlike Pakistan, Pakistan is the 4th fastest big growing country in the world. It is going to double in 27 years in its population. It's very frightening if you look at a curve. And the only thing that Pakistan has never done in its entire history is have a national initiative to ensure and make sure that every single child can go to school, and especially girls. And until that happens, nothing will change in a country like Pakistan. Also, when girls learn how to read and write, they often teach their mother how to read and write. Boys, we don't seem to do that as much. Also, you'll see people coming home from the bazaar or marketplace, and they have meat or vegetables wrapped in newspaper. And then you'll see the mother very carefully unfolding a newspaper and asking her daughter to read the news to her. It's the first time that woman is able to get information of what's going on in the big world around her. She can learn about exploitation of women and women's rights and the many good things that are happening with women around the world. When someone goes on jihad, and jihad means a quest. There's a lesser jihad and a greater jihad. And they first, though, should get permission from their mother. If they don't, it's very shameful or disgraceful. When a woman has an education, she's much less likely to encourage her son to get into violence or into terrorism. And I've seen that happen over the last decade. The Taliban, their primary recruiting grounds are from illiterate, impoverished society because most educated women, even at risk of their lives, they refuse to allow their sons to join the Taliban. It can be a very strong deterrent. So now I've got some really good news, and I've got some really bad news. So do you want to hear the bad news first or the good news? Bad news? Okay. Here's the bad news. In the last 3 years, since 2007, the Taliban and Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jamaat Islamiyah, and other groups, they have bombed, destroyed, or shut down over 1,100 schools in Afghanistan and Pakistan. And over 850 schools in Pakistan. So nearly 2,000 schools. What's interesting, though, is that about 90% of the schools, they're girls' schools. They're not boys' schools. So why do a group of big bad men, you know, armed with Kalashnikovs, why are they so terrified of little girls going to school? Because I think their greatest fear, it's not a bullet, but it's a pen. And what they fear the most, if that girl goes to school, gets her education, the valve of education goes on in the community, and they've lost a way to get ideologically to control society. In the Hadith, which is a part of Islam, there's a couple of people taking notes, so it's H-A-D-I-T-H, Hadith. It says, the ink of a scholar is greater than the blood of a martyr. It means that the pen is more powerful than the sword. And Nelson Mandela from South Africa, he said, education is the most powerful weapon that we have in the world today. So now here's the good news. In 2000, a decade ago, there were 800,000 children in school in Afghanistan. This is at the height of the Taliban. Today, there are 8.4 million children in school in Afghanistan, including 2.5 million females. This is the greatest increase in school enrollment in any country in modern history. So if any of you out there, and also in the other audience, did any of you know about this before I told you this today? Yes? One person? If there's a yes, put your hand up. Where'd you hear about it, sir? Oh, in the recent book. Okay. Thank you. He heard about it in the recent book. Anyways, you know, I've spoken to about 500,000 people in the last year and a half, and I've asked that question. Only about 50 hands have come up. I was briefing 5 U.S. senators in Washington, D.C. this spring, and I told them about this, and when I got done, they were patting themselves on the back. And I said, how can you take credit for something you don't even know about? But that's a politician for you. Now, of course, Canada and the U.S., we deserve a little credit, but the main reason is because the tenacity and desire of communities and women, especially, to have their children get an education. One example, this is Aziza. She's from the tribal areas. She is the first woman out of 4,000 people to get an education in her valley. And it wasn't very easy. When she was in elementary school, the boys threw stones at her. And when she got to high school, the teachers refused to teach her because she was female. But guess what happened? Aziza graduated. In 1998, Aziza went to 2 years of maternal health care training. She learned how to deliver babies and do pre- and postnatal care. In her valley, before Aziza started working there, in 2005 to 20 women died in childbirth every single year. So Aziza went to 2 years of training. It cost $800. She came back in 2000. In the last 10 years, not one single woman has died in Jefferson Valley because a brave young woman named Aziza. Her pay is about $1.50 per day. That shows you what one brave woman can do with her education. This is Admiral Mike Mullen. He's the chairman, Joint Chief of Staff of the U.S. military. And I actually have tremendous respect for him. He read 3 cups of tea last year, and he invited me to come to the Pentagon, have a cup of tea, and he also said, you know, all I hear about is bad news, so could I hear some good news? And I said, certainly, I'll be happy to talk with you. And so I went to the Pentagon, and then he said, I would like to come and visit one of your girls' schools. I said, well, you can do that, but let me check with the elders first. And they said, certainly. So July 14th last year, we're in a very remote valley in Afghanistan, and over the horizon come 3 Black Hawk helicopters. They settle down, and out jump Admiral Mike Mullen. Anyways, we opened up the school in Pushkar, and what I have seen over the last maybe 7-6 years is a tremendous learning curve in the military, and I think in many ways the military also is really starting to get it. Admiral Mullen gave a speech at the American Legion National Convention last August in Kentucky. And this were some excerpts from the beginning of his speech. He said, historically, we, meaning the United States, we have been far too arrogant in the world. We need to go out and serve with humility. The Muslim community is a subtle world we don't fully and don't always attempt to understand. Only through a shared appreciation of the people's cultures, values, and needs can we ourselves hope to supplant the extremist narrative. We cannot capture hearts and minds. We must engage them. One mind, we must listen to them. One mind, one heart at a time, over time, Admiral Mike Mullen. And Admiral Mike Mullen also wrote, I'm almost done with this book this morning. It's about your previous Minister of Defense. And Admiral Mike Mullen, when he heard that he was resigning recently, he wrote him a letter. He was standing by General Hillier's chair in Kabul. And this is what Admiral Mullen wrote. He said that I've been there in 2003, meaning I've been in Canada with Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld. When we left Canada, we were talking amongst ourselves, and the essence of our comments was that we had written off Canada as a serious player, a serious contributor to anything that happens around the world. We had written you all off. Now you guys, meaning Canadians, you are at the forefront of everything positive. You are setting the example of countries in Europe to follow for other Western countries and around the world for any country. You are setting an example for us to follow. You guys are doing it. It's absolutely incredible.